the Sermon on the Mount. Well, welcome to you. What I thought I'd do is give a personal interpretation of the Sermon on the Mount. And not only is it a personal interpretation, but it's a reinterpretation. I keep reinterpreting it, But this is a personal reinterpretation based on my Kejawen beliefs. Now, this is part of a new section to the magic of Java called The Real Magic of Java. In this new section, I'm going to focus on real people performing what they believe to be real magic in Java. I'll attempt to explain some of the elements of this Javanese magic, particularly what I describe as the Kejawen elements. However, I need to warn you that inevitably my explanations will be partial. Maybe sometimes some elements of what I say will be incorrect, for which I profusely apologise. But this reflects the oral tradition of magic in Java, the mystery, and at times, I have to admit, subterfuge surrounding the practice of magic in Java. Please accept my apologies, but I do hope you enjoy this new section. Prayer. And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray, standing in the synagogues and on the street corners, to be seen by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Now, I've already said that Jesus' comments on adultery and divorce were challenging. Well, to a certain degree, these are even more so to me. Now, I've constantly said that I'm no ceremonial magician, but I do love the ritual of Sufi prayers and the Anglo-Catholic Mass. As Sufis, we use tasbihs, prayer beads, for dhikr, repetitive prayers, which seem to create a sort of trance-like feeling in me, which I think helps me later to meditate. I really do believe that when we pray at the same time each day in the same way, in the same direction, and particularly if we do so in others, say in a masjid, in a church, then it does increase the power of those prayers. And that's because I believe that anything, and certainly any spirit, should we say, becomes more powerful with the more people that deify them. So if people are deifying the same God, and basically I think all gods are the same, but if people are deifying the same God in the same way at the same time, then it's so much more powerful. But Jesus is saying that we should pray quietly to God. Now, maybe I'm just justifying my practices, but for me, I need to use repetitive actions and words before I feel I can really open up to God. So the quiet prayer that Jesus talks of is what I do after my formal prayer. And maybe you could argue during my meditation, which, my formal prayer reminds me to do regularly. So, maybe it keeps me on track for the more informal prayer that Jesus talks of. Of course, I agree that God knows all and there's no need to pray. So there's no need to pray or make a public show of it. Interestingly, Jesus states that God already knows what we want. And more importantly, there's no need to ask God for things in your prayers. And of course, this is a very important feature of most religions. Even in Islam, in our prayers, there are specific parts to petition Allah for things. And I'm intrigued by this because of it's something I've struggled about for a long time. And that is, and indeed it would apply to manifestation, wouldn't it? And that is that should we actually ask God for things? And I differ because of I know that manifestation works, but then I struggle as to whether or not I should manifest anything. Should I ask for things, particularly if they're things for me? And maybe at best we should ask for sufficiency. But to a certain degree, if we are submitting to God, then we don't need to ask because he knows best, as Jesus said in the last part of this. So interesting, very interesting, all this about prayer. I can't say I've got definitive answers for you. It's something that I will reflect on and continue to reflect on. Treasures in heaven. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And this really does highlight how the trinkets of the materialist world are completely ephemeral. Indeed, it says we need to move. As we move to virtual consumption, they become even more ephemeral. What are these things we're purchasing on our mobile phones that there's no substance to them whatsoever? Is it even entertainment, or is it addiction? There's nothing at all to them. Now, something I've often said, but I think it's worth repeating: what is money? What is money? Think about it. Think about it deeply. Even meditate on it and keep meditating on it, because I think once you've meditated on money, all of this will become so apparent to you. The eye of the lamp, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So Jesus really does seem to see things in terms of the light and dark, or rather an absence of light, rather than the good and evil. Now, he does speak about evil. I'm not saying, even in the Sermon on the Mount, he speaks about evil. I'm not saying he doesn't. And indeed, you'll hear me sometimes use the word. But what I've come to understand, that it's light and an absence of light. That's really what we're talking about. Now, if you move to a higher vibration, you will be granted this light, and you will be full of love and bliss. But if you give up your free will and become what I call an avatar, you'll always be filled with this darkness. Now, I'm not simply saying here that you'll commit bad acts or you'll do things that are wrong. No, it's much deeper than this. You'll never find happiness because you'll always be chasing hedonism or money. The Romans used to say that money is a greed that is never sated. It's like drinking salt water to quench your thirst. The more money you have, the greedier you become. So we all say to ourselves, well, if only I got this, I could be happy. And throughout the Sermon on the Mount, what Jesus is telling us is, be happy in yourself now. You can do it. You don't need to say, if only I had this, if only I had that, if only, if only, if only. None of these things matter. None of these things matter. Happiness you find within yourself by raising your vibration. And he really does dig it in now. He says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one or love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And this really is at the heart of my beliefs. And what's been so important about the Sermon on the Mount to me for all these years. There are so many greedy people in the world, aren't there? So many people that have got a lot of money but still want more. Because as I say, the more you have, the more you want. But what about television preachers? Even television ustads, let's be fair on religions. They call out other religions for being polytheistic, even though very, very few truly are. Often you hear the evangelical preachers tirading against Catholicism, suggesting that they worship the Pope, suggesting that they don't follow God. But these preachers themselves, they have money as their God. Money is their God. And you can't follow money and God's will. So you cannot follow the hegemony of greed, the hegemony of scarcity, the hegemony of hoarding, and be devoted to God. No, we're being called to turn our backs on the materialist world and create our own New Jerusalem. Now, I know you're shouting at me by now saying, it's all right for you living up a mountain in Java, growing your own food, but I've got an apartment with a mortgage on it, I've got a car with a loan on it, and I need to have that car to drive to work, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, maybe we do have to interact with the materialist world. Maybe we do. Even I, at times. But hold true. Hold true. Hold true. God is your God, not money. Do not worry. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you eat or drink, or about your body or what you will wear. It's not life more than food and the body more than clothes. Look at the birds in the air. Do they not sow or reap or store away in barns? And yet the Heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? Wonderful, isn't it? He talks of the bounty that God provides us with, and specifically warns us not to hoard. Not to believe that we live in a society of scarcity. Stop allowing their hegemony to worry you with their fear porn. And that's what it is. Look what's happening right now. Fear porn completely. That's how they control us. But the truth is, they may be trying to control us, but we can't control the universe. They can't, we can't. So just submit to it. Submit to God, submit to the universe. Now, I always say, particularly when I do my tarot readings about worry, the Nine of Swords in particular, what is worry but a prayer for things to go wrong? Think about it. If you're worrying, aren't you manifesting things going wrong? My mum, she's 91 now. I've not seen her in 2 years thanks to this health crisis. I doubt if I'll ever see her again or even be able to go to her funeral the way things are looking. But for at least, probably all her life, but for the last 10 years she's hardly got out of bed. And she spends all her time worrying about everything, particularly about me. And I think some of the problems that have befallen me over the last few years have been my mum's worry, because they are self-fulfilling prophecies. If you worry about things and think about your own life, think about when you've been desperately worried about things, they've happened, haven't they? And there have been other times when you've been confident that something's going to happen, and that happens. And that is how the world works. That's how the universe works. Jesus is telling us that. He is. And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labour or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendour was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow, and is thrown into the fire, he will not much more clothe you, you of little faith. So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans have run after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and these things will be given to you as well. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And this really does summarise everything, doesn't it? What are these trinkets that they bribe us with? Why do we worry about everything? To the narcissist, image is all, but God is about substance, real substance. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, are these not based on narcissistic assumptions? By creating narcissists, taking society further and further away from how God intended us to live. In fact, I often argue they're black magic. Are you watching on your phone now? Are you? What's it like when it's turned off? It's black, isn't it? Does it remind you of a black scrying mirror? That's me. If we look at what's happened to restaurants over certainly the last 20 years, do they provide food anymore, or isn't it all about image? So we eat food that doesn't provide for our nutritional needs and makes us unhealthy, just to be seen in the right restaurant. And we pay more for it. We pay more for this food. The society we live in seems to be constantly spinning plates to complicate and confuse us. Never looking for the truth. Never looking for the truth. And Jesus now reminds us that there's no past, nor future. All we have is the present. So live for the now. Live each day full of love and bliss, and you'll find the happiness. You'll find God. You'll find life. But live each day to the full. Judging others. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure that you use, it'll be measured to you. As I have always said, only God has the right to judge. Even the severity of the crime or sin, whatever you want to call it, and to decide the punishment. Now, that's actually a simplification, because I think we actually do it ourselves, obviously jointly with God. So I have this view, like Swedenborg does, that when the time comes, we actually judge how we've been. When the day of judgment actually comes, which is a long way off, then we ourselves do the judging. But there's no hiding. God knows everything, So there's no hiding. We will judge ourselves by our own criteria, and what will happen to us will be based on our own judgment. But of course, that is God shining a spotlight on us. And there's also a warning here that whatever measure we use of the severity, and I've always said it's not for us to judge the severity of a crime. And a part of that is, you may have heard me say that I believe that we, through our own will, we give up our free will and we become these avatars. So once we become these avatars, it's not our own will. So therefore, the severity of what we do, we cannot judge that severity of it. However heinous crimes may be they genocide, racism, whatever, we can't judge the severity because it's not necessarily coming from the person that we think is the perpetrator. So only God has the right to decide that. What he does judge is somebody gave away their free will, and he can judge us on that. So I think that's a very strong warning about this. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Of course, we're all sinners, particularly when sin includes our thoughts and intentions. So what gives anyone the right and authority to judge and punish others? They themselves will be judged and punished by God for daring to think that they were God. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under the feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Some of you may know that I have what I suppose is almost a pathological aversion to evangelism. And this seems to support my feelings. Don't waste your time on these avatars that I talk of. Even though I do really feel that we need a way of incorporating them within our universe, but they'll never understand the love and bliss when they are under the will of others. So if they don't have free will, they cannot understand the love and the bliss. And this is a tension that I believe comes throughout the Sermon on the Mount, and it's a difficult one to understand because we need to show compassion for these people, but also need to understand that while they are like that, they will never change. So you won't change them through argument. They can only change themselves. You can show them the light and maybe they decide they would like to have it for themselves. But argument won't make any difference. And, I used to, well, I suppose I still do to a degree, I used to argue with people on YouTube. And slowly I began to realise that some of the most provocative comments you see on YouTube are made by people working for overseas security services. And they're doing this. You might say, why on earth are they doing it? They're doing it just to cause trouble in other countries. They don't have a mission to sort of support Trump or support Biden or no, they don't care. All they care about is causing turmoil. So if they can spread rumours about Trump or Biden or whatever, spread any sort of rumours, then they cause division in that country, and that country becomes more difficult to govern, and therefore they gain an advantage. And it doesn't even matter if those countries aren't their enemies, but their friends, because they still gain an advantage. They still gain an advantage. So that's why it's happening. It's disgusting, isn't it? It really is. But yeah, so many of these arguments I've got into were created by contractors for overseas security services. And it gets worse. Later I discovered many not even to be contractors and people, but were artificial intelligence bots. And I suppose the most sinister bit of this is I started to uncover very, very hardline Islamic views, verging on supporting terrorism. But these appeared to be bots that had been... And now if you argue with these bots, you only help to train them. So, do not throw pearls to pigs. You will only train the bots if you argue with them. And when I've called them out, I've even been contacted by what I have to assume is their programmers, innocently inquiring how I spotted these were bots. They were very friendly towards me because of having called them out as bots created. Then the programmers want to make them better and wanted to know how I'd managed to do it. But yeah, it's frightening, isn't it? Very frightening. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this. Because these are real events, I can't say how regularly I'm going to be adding to this subsection. Because I don't know how often they're going to occur. But I would imagine that they'll be at least every couple of months, maybe monthly. Now, if you'd like to know when that's going to be, please subscribe and hit the button, and you'll get information on when new ones are released. I'd love you to make comments and ask questions, and if you do, I'll attempt to answer them as honestly as I can. I promise you that there's no attempt on this channel or this part of this channel of me. There'll be no attempt by me at any type of subterfuge. I'll try to be as honest and open as I possibly can be. Inevitably, there will be some of you who disagree with my interpretation, and we can agree to disagree. But what you're seeing is real stuff here. What I'd love you to do, if you enjoyed this, is look at my other sections. Particularly, I've written novels about magic in Java, and they contain much more information in them, especially me trying to understand the theories of magic, the psychology of it, and I try and intersperse them with a sort of spiritual dimension. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and God bless you.